Okay, so our year 3 to year 6 story for the next few days will be Grandpa's Greatest Escape by David Walliams. This is a tale of a boy called Jack and his grandfather. Once upon a time, Grandpa was in the Royal Air Force. He was a pilot. During World War II, he flew a Spitfire fighter plane. Our story is set in 1983. This was a time before the internet and mobile phones and computer games that could be played for weeks on end. In 1983, Grandpa was already an old man, but his grandson Jack was just 12 years old. And there's Jack and his grandpa. This is Jack's mum and dad. Mum, Barbara, works at the cheese counter in the local supermarket. Dad, Barry, is an accountant. Raj is the local newsagent. Miss Verity is the history teacher at Jack's school. Detectives Beef and Bone are a crime-fighting duo. This is the town's vicar, Reverend Hogg. This security guard works at the Imperial War Museum in London. Miss Swine is the matron of the local old folks' home, Twilight Towers. Some of the elderly residents there include Mrs. Trifle, the Major, and the Rear Admiral. These are some of the nurses who work at Twilight Towers: Nurse Rose, Nurse Daisy, and Nurse Blossom. This is Twilight Towers. Twilight Towers, caring for your unwanted old folk home. This is the map of our town. One day, Grandpa began to forget things. It was little things at first. The old man would make himself a cup of tea and forget to drink it. Before long, he would line up dozens of cups of cold tea on his kitchen table. Or he'd run a bath and forget to turn off the taps, flooding his neighbour's flat downstairs. Or he would leave the house with an express purpose of buying a stamp and return with 17 boxes of cornflakes. Grandpa didn't even like cornflakes. Over time, Grandpa started to forget bigger things. That year, it was whether his wife, Peggy, was alive or not. One day, he even stopped recognising his own sons. Most startling of all was that Grandpa completely forgot that he was old. The old man had always told his little grandson Jack stories of his adventures in the Royal Air Force all those years ago in World War II. Now these stories became more and more real to him. In fact, instead of just telling these stories, he began to live them out. The present faded into scratchy black, and the past burst into glorious colour. It didn't matter where Grandpa was, or what he was doing, or whom he was with. In his mind, he was a dashing young pilot behind the controls of his Spitfire fighter plane. All the people in Grandpa's life found this very difficult to understand. Except one person, his grandson Jack. Like all children, the boy loved to play, and it seemed to him that his grandpa was playing. Jack realised all you had to do was play too. Part 1. Reach for the sky. Chapter 1. Spam a la custard. Jack was a child who's happiest alone in his bedroom. A naturally shy boy, he didn't have many friends. Instead of spending his days playing football in the park with the other kids from school, he would stay inside, assembling his prized collection of model aeroplanes. His favourites were from World War II, the Lancaster bomber, the Hurricane, and of course his grandfather's old plane, the legendary Spitfire. On the Nazi side, he had models of the Dornier bomber, the Junkers, and the Spitfire's deadliest nemesis, the Messerschmitt. With great care, Jack would paint his model planes and fix them to the ceiling with fishing wire. Suspending in the air, they looked like they were in the middle of a dramatic dogfight. At night, he would stare up at them from his bunk bed and would drift off to sleep, dreaming he was an RAF flying ace, just like his grandfather once was. The boy kept a picture of Grandpa by his bed. He was a young man in an old black and white photograph. It was taken sometime in 1940, at the height of the Battle of Britain. Grandpa was standing proudly in his RAF uniform. In his dreams, Jack would go up, up, up and away, just like his grandfather had. The boy would have given everything he had, all of the past and all of his future, for one moment behind the controls of Grandpa's legendary Spitfire. In his dreams, he would be a hero. In his life, he felt like a zero. The problem was, each day was exactly the same. He would go to the school in the morning, do his homework every afternoon, and eat his dinner in front of the TV each night. If only he wasn't so shy. If only he had lots of friends. If only he could break free from his boring life. The highlight of Jack's week was Sunday. That was the day his parents would leave him with his grandfather. Before the old man had become too unwell, he would take his grandson to the most magical place, the Imperial War Museum in London, and it was the place they loved to visit the most. It didn't take too long to get to London, and it was a treasure trove of military things. Together, the pair would marvel at the old warplanes hanging on the ceiling of the great room. The legendary Spitfire was, of course, their absolute favourite. Seeing her always brought Grandpa's memories of the war flooding back. He would share these stories with his grandson, who devoured every word. On the long bus journey home, Jack would bombard the old man with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions. What's the fastest speed you ever went in your Spitfire? Did you ever have to parachute out? Which is a better fighter plane, the Spitfire or the Messerschmitt? And Grandpa loved answering him. Often a crowd of children would gather round the old man on the top deck of the bus to listen to these incredible tales. It was the summer of 1940, Grandpa would begin, the height of the Battle of Britain. One night I was flying on my Spitfire over the English Channel. I'd become separated from my squadron. My fighter plane had taken a pounding in a dogfight. Now I was limping back to base. Then, just behind me, I heard machine guns. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. It was the Nazi Messerschmitt, right on my tail again. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. It was just two of us over the sea. That night would be an epic fight. Grandpa enjoyed nothing more than sharing his stories of World War II adventures. Jack would listen intently. Every detail fascinated him. Over time, the boy became something of an expert on these old fighter planes. Grandpa would tell his grandson that he would make an excellent pilot one day. This always made the boy burst with pride. Then, later in the day, if ever an old black and white war film was on the TV, the pair would snuggle up on the sofa together in Grandpa's house and watch it. Reach for the Sky was one they watched over and over and over again. This classic story told the story of a pilot who lost both his legs in a horrific accident during World War II. Despite this, Douglas Bader went on to become a legendary flying ace. Rainy Saturday afternoons were made for this film, or One of Our Aircrafts is Missing, or The Way the Stars Matter, or A Matter of Life and Death. For Jack, there was nothing better to do. Sadly, the food at Grandpa's home was always diabolical. He called it rations, as he had during the war. The old man only ever ate food from tins. For dinner, he would select a couple of random tins from his larder and empty them into a pan together. Corned beef with pineapple chunks, sardines and pudding rice, treacle sponge with peas, baked beans with mixed tinned peaches, dried carrots in condensed milk, chocolate pudding covered in tomato soup, pilchards with spaghetti hoops, steak and kidney pudding and fruit cocktail, haggis topped with cherries and syrup, and Grandpa's speciality, spam a la custard. I really rather hope you're reading nicer things at home than that. The use of the French words gave it an air of poshness that it did not deserve. Fortunately, the boy didn't come for the food. World War II was the most important time in Grandpa's life. It was a time when brave Royal Air Force pilots like him fought for their country in the Battle of Britain. The Nazis were planning an invasion, a plot they called Operation Sea Lion. However, without being able to secure power over the skies to protect their troops on the ground, the Nazis were never able to put their plan into action. Day after day, night after night, RAF pilots like Grandpa risked their lives to keep people of Britain free from being captured by the Nazis. So instead of reading a book to his grandson at bedtime, the old man would tell the boy of his real-life adventures during the war. His stories were more thrilling than any book you could find. "One more tale, Grandpa, please," the boy begged one night. "I want to hear about when you were shot down by the Luftwaffe and had to crash into the English Channel." "It's late, young Jack," Grandpa replied. "You go to sleep. I promise I will tell you that tale and plenty more in the morning." "But—" "I'll meet you in your dreams, Squadron Leader," the old man said as he kissed Jack tenderly on the forehead. Squadron Leader was his nickname for his grandson. "I'll see you up in the skies. Up, up, up and away." "Up, up, up and away," the boy would repeat as he drifted off to sleep in Grandpa's spare room, dreaming he too was a fighter pilot. Time spent with Grandpa couldn't have been more perfect. But that was about to change. And tomorrow we'll read chapter 2 to find out what Jack and his grandpa get up to. See you soon. Bye.